often find myself looking back at the books that I've read and changing the ratings that I've given the books way after the fact. And that's because I've never actually sat down and asked myself the question, what makes a book a different rating? So I'm constantly changing my ratings because I don't have a set criteria of a 4-star book or a 1-star book. So I finally did that. I went back, found some books that I think accurately depict each star rating, and came up with some criteria for the different ratings. So without further ado, here is my book rating system. But let's start with the worst, a 1-star book. Now I will say I only rate books that I finish, because I think if you don't finish a book, that's enough of a rating in and of itself. A 1-star. These are the books that I absolutely hated. That when I was reading it, it actually stirred up anger in me, and not in a good way. In a way that there's nothing that the author could say that would excuse that behavior or that decision in my mind, and I wouldn't recommend these books even to my worst enemy. Some books that I think are 1-stars for me are The Hating Game by Sally Thorne and Forcing Fate by M.A. Frick. I know that The Hating Game is popular, but I could not handle the cringe in this book, and the amount of times that the female main character was described as short, called herself short, said something about herself being short was way too many for me. I also feel that the relationship between the FMC and the MMC was entirely one-sided. Lucy, the FMC, was attracted to the MMC, but she just treated him absolutely horribly, and so I couldn't root for the romance in the end. Because honestly, he deserved better. Forcing Fate. Now, I read this book because it was recommended to me as a Fourth Wing knockoff. Now, if you know anything about me, Fourth Wing is one of my all-time favorite books. I love that. And at this time, I was still like yearning for that same feeling that I got when I was reading Fourth Wing. So when I saw this book and someone was like, oh my gosh, it's like kind of like Fourth Wing, I was like, let me read it. Guess what? It's not. I mean, there are dragons, and like this girl goes to school to learn how to be a dragon rider. But that's kind of where the similarities end. I read this book and wanted to throw myself out the window. The female main character is absolutely useless and makes such reckless decisions with not even 0.5 seconds of thinking before she does something. Completely ignoring all advice of those older and wiser than her. And then enters the love interest. Except you wouldn't really know he's the love interest if it wasn't completely spelled out for you, because the way that he treats the FMC is completely horrible. One of my least favorite things in books is when an author takes a grumpy sunshine trope or an enemies to lovers trope and uses that as an excuse to make the male main character the most deplorable human imaginable and say that it's like grumpy. It's like, no, that's just cruel. And I really just can't root for a romance where the guy shows absolutely zero kindness for the woman he's supposedly in love with. A book that is 2 stars is one that I enjoyed at some points. However, near the end, it just completely took a nosedive off the deep end and left me more confused than anything. Fearful by Lauren Roberts is a great example of this. This is a novella in the Powerless trilogy. You're following Kit through some difficult times in his life. I enjoyed this book until about the 80% mark, and then the characters were unrecognizable from who they were at the beginning, and I just found the book completely lacking that character development to explain the drastic difference in who they were at the beginning of the book versus who they were at the end of the book. You got to the point where the characters were doing things, saying things, exhibiting behaviors that just did not make sense in their character arc whatsoever. I found myself like flipping back in the book to see if I had maybe missed pages that explained some of the things I was confused about. And then we got to the end of the book and it posed more questions than it answered, and the questions that it brought up really didn't need to be asked. A 3 stars. A book that I am enjoying in the moment, but not one that I'm going to be thinking about a lot in the future. I would recommend these to people, and I might even consider rereading these at some point. The first example is The Princess Diaries by Meg Cabot. I read the Princess Diaries series when I want to have a good time. These books are genuinely funny to me and a bit unhinged in Mia's thought process throughout the books, but they don't have a whole lot of substance. They don't require a whole lot of brain power, and I genuinely can't really tell you what happens in the books, but I just know that when I read them I have a good time, and that's all that I'm looking for. A second example is Romancing the Grump by Jenny Proctor. This is a part of the Appy's cute little hockey romance series. I enjoyed all of the books in this series, however this one just didn't flow as well as the other ones. I still really enjoyed it, thought the romance was cute, but it's not something that I am like constantly thinking about. A 4-star book is one that gets me intrigued and I want to know what happens next. I connect with the characters, have an easy time following the plot, and find myself thinking about it occasionally after I finished the book. There are many points that I can recall in the book when I enjoyed it, and I will recommend it to people when I have the chance. One of these books is American Royals by Katharine McGee. I describe this as a kind of Gossip Girl situation. The characters all have their flaws. They have their likable moments, they have their very unlikable moments, but it's kind of one of those dumpster fires that you simply cannot look away from. When I was reading this book, I was on a trip with my family. I was already up super late, and this book kept me up even later because I was drawn to continue to turn the pages and figure out what happened next. It's not often that a book genuinely keeps me up at night, but these characters and this plotline are just so addicting to read. Accomplice to the Villain by Hannah Nicole Mayer. This is the 3rd book in the Assistant to the Villain series, and I found myself asking a lot of questions while I was reading it, but not because I was confused, not because there were a bunch of plot holes, but because the author opens the door to intrigue and you were just drawn to turn the page to find out what happens next because the plot flows really well and you're just compelled to find out more about the plot, more about the characters, more about the setting. You're asking questions because you're enjoying the story and because you want to find out more, not because you're confused about what's going on. This is a book I finished and then immediately got sad because the next book isn't out yet, so I have to wait to see what happens to the characters next. And finally, we have a 5-star read. These are the books that make me feel all the feelings. I'm crying, I'm laughing, my stomach is churning because I'm nervous about what's happening to the characters. I feel like my eyes cannot move fast enough to read the pages. I feel all the emotions that the characters are feeling, and when I'm done with this book, I genuinely wonder if I will ever like another book ever again. I will recommend these books to anyone who will listen. I will chase a stranger down in the street to tell them about these books. Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins is an anomaly because yes, I knew how this book was going to end before I started it. So how was it that I was sobbing, crying in public about this book when I knew how it was going to end? I fell in love with the writing, with the characters, with the little quirks about their personalities that we got to experience in these books. It hurt me so much in a good way. Because how was it that Suzanne Collins was able to create these connections with characters that are literally ink on paper? An Ember in the Ashes by Sabaa Tahir. If you've ever heard anybody mention that 5-star feeling, this book gave me that. It's one of those things that you can't really explain, but once you've experienced it, then you just know that that's what it is. The feeling that you know you are going to be forever changed by the book that you are currently reading. This is one of those books that while I was reading it, my eyes were jumping around the pages, reading paragraphs out of order because I was just so excited to keep reading it. Okay, I feel good about those rating descriptions. Hopefully this will help me to be more consistent in my rating and help prevent that retroactive rating that I have been doing. Anyways guys, that is all I have for you guys today. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up to let me know that you enjoy this type of content. Comment down below what makes a book 5 stars for you, and subscribe to my channel for more bookish content in the future. I hope you have a lovely rest of your week, and I will see you guys next time.